I suppose we can all be very glad we're alive. Oh. Because it's nearly the end of June and Greta Thunberg said that humanity would be wiped out, sorry about this, in 5 years' time. And as I say, we're all still alive. She supported her argument 5 years ago. Hang on, sorry, I've got to get a quote up on, sorry. So don't look at me like that. Hang on, here it is. She supported her argument by saying that a top climate scientist is warning that climate change will wipe out all of humanity unless we stop using fossil fuels over the next 5 years. Okay, so that's that. Now, that was, she took that quote from an article, well, not quite, she made that quote out of an article by an atmospheric scientist called James Anderson. But according to Professor Anderson, the article actually misquoted him, and the article's since been deleted. Now, this is very interesting because I tried to find a copy of that article and I couldn't. It's been completely wiped from the internet, which is, as I say, interesting because the internet is supposed to be forever, and yet on this occasion it isn't. There's been a considerable amount of effort to remove it from all the links I've looked for. And that's in itself rather strange. I mean, things hang around, don't they, on the internet? So anyway, the prediction has more or less proved itself wrong. Remember, the ice caps are actually growing, the glaciers are still in place, and it turns out that the barrier reef is still full of very healthy coral. So, okay, you can say that the prediction's wrong and the argument should, well, Greta Thunberg and her friends should have said, all right, sorry, mea culpa, maxima culpa, I got it wrong. No need to frighten the kids with horror stories. Let's just get on with living our lives. So, but that's not happening. Our government and many others are still going full tilt to reduce our, well, what they say is to reduce our carbon footprint or something by launching some hideously expensive net zero ideas which we really cannot afford. And people beef about the cost of supporting Ukraine, but at least supporting Ukraine has the advantage of showing aggressive countries that we're not prepared to lie down and let them have their way with us. And there is another thing, I mean, the various things like tanks and missiles are very expensive, but when they're shown to be effective, they get sold to other countries. Now, you may say we don't want any country to be armed, but I'm afraid that's another ideal that we can't rely on, at least in the near future. So arms fighting shows other countries they can't mess with you, and arms are not entirely a gift to other countries. I'm not suggesting it's great, I'm just stating what happens. And let's face it, an arms industry is an industry. It employs people at the very least. Now, what does net zero do to us? Well, it actually stops people from being employed, doesn't it? It means farmers are not allowed to keep more than a certain number of cows. That's what the Dutch government have discovered to their cost when the farmers actually got together and formed their own party. But there's so much else going on. And in Britain, you know, nobody's that enthusiastic about this sort of thing, and so the government's taking full advantage of it. That is costing us and will cost us huge amounts of money, possibly a lot more than the arms that we're sending to Ukraine. And it has the effect not of selling Britain to other people, but of starving British people, of reducing our ability to get around because we can't use our cars anymore, of 15 minutes citying our cities, which don't ever become 15 minutes and mean we can't get to, well, hospitals or ballet classes or whatever, because we're enclosed in. I am expressing this very strongly, but you know what I mean. It's restricting us. It's reducing our standard of living. It's reducing our lives. And in many ways, it's reducing our ability to communicate with each other. And while people are talking about when people are criticising the giving away of armaments to a country that's being invaded, they stay quiet on the lunatic waste of money in chasing this net zero rainbow. And like any other fairyland ideal, net zero is completely unattainable. There will never be a perfect point of lack of pollution. And I remember when I was a kid how bad pollution used to be, and by which standards we are living in a crystal clear world now. But there is always another step you can make, isn't there? And always another bit of purity you can try to carve out of somebody's life. And it's getting so bad, I'm starting to think it looks like some sort of a distraction from other answers, other questions that we can't answer. And the governments are just going for that because it sort of takes our eyes off some really nasty thing that we're not supposed to be looking at. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. Yeah. Anyway, St. Greta and her followers completely and unapologetically are continuing their work of frightening children and susceptible adults and embarrassing governments into making awful mistakes. And the worst of it is that the governments are, as I said, completely towing the line for whichever reason, because any sensible person knows that there's something wrong with net zeroing a country when there are old soldiers lying down in doorways at night because they've got nobody to take care of them. They don't care about net zero. Okay, well, till next time. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the Graniopteryx design or Granbow with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.graniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.